In the last section, we created a start and lap button in addition to the timer at the top, but everything is obviously pretty darn misplaced. It'd be nice if we did some preliminary styling just to get everything into more or less the right position right now. So let's go ahead and create a style sheet and get started. So at the top, the first thing we'll do is pull off the style sheet property off of the React object. We're going to use the style sheet object here because we are probably not going to have any dynamic styles in here. So we will go back to defining our style sheet beneath our component like so. So we'll say var styles, style sheet.create, capital S, and then we'll pass that an object. Now we're going to make use of Flexbox in this section just as we did previously. The only thing is that our use is going to be much more complex than it was before. In the last section, we were just centering some content on the page, but this time we've got a lot of moving pieces, and we really need to make sure that we're doing everything, putting it all into just the right spot. So I'm going to show you a couple tricks that's going to make our life a lot easier doing this. But before we do that, I want to show you a quick cheat sheet where if you get lost at any point or I use any properties that look kind of weird or mysterious, you can make reference to, and it's really just a fantastic resource in general. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the browser, and the URL, I'm not going to give you the exact URL because it's kind of a confusing link or a long link. Instead, we'll search for it via Google. So we'll say Flexbox cheat sheet, a guide to Flexbox. And if we're lucky, sure enough, it's right here at the top. You're looking for the domain csstricks.com. And I've certainly been to this website many times. It's really just a fantastic guide here. So it's organized generally into two different columns. The right-hand side lists properties that we can apply to child elements, whereas the left-hand column are properties that we apply to the parent or the container. All the properties that we've used thus far are properties that were set on the parent. So we set properties on the parent to position its children. This is opposed to, if you're at all familiar with using position absolute or position relative with CSS, where normally you would apply properties to the child to move it around on the page. So anyways, looking down the left-hand column, you'll see a couple things on here like flex direction, which we made use of. And it shows the different options that we can have, row and column. Note that on here, row is listed as the default, but that's for the web, that's for browsers. With React Native, we get a default of column. There's some other very important properties that we're probably going to make use of inside this app called Flex Wrap. We've also got more detail on justify content and align items right below it. And we'll probably make reference back to the diagrams here for justify content because it's a lot easier to show what's going on with a diagram than to try to explain it with words. Anyways, now that you've got this cheat sheet handy, let's get back to it. So first, let's look at another mock-up. This one is going to be slightly different, but still the same application. So you'll see that all the content is still in the same place, but this one's been color-coded a little bit. So this is a little trick that I really like to use with Flexbox, something that's going to make our life a little bit easier. So you'll notice that basically the top half here is yellow with the background. You see the thin strip or the border around. The bottom half is blue. Inside of the top half, we have what's supposed to be red. It's kind of pink, but it's supposed to be red. And then we have some green beneath it. So keep these colors in your mind here. We're going to go ahead and add some comments to our JSX here to make sure that we've got basically roughly the same structure here. We're also going to add in a couple of view tags to make sure that we have a view tag that maps up to each one of these different colors. So first, we have a view tag for the overall application. That doesn't really have a color. That's really just the outline of the phone that we have here. The next thing we have is the yellow, the top half of the page. So let's add a view tag for that. This yellow is going to encompass both the timer and the two buttons. I'm going to add a comment on here that just says yellow. Next, I'm going to add another view tag to represent the red area around our timer. The only thing that sits inside of this view tag is the timer itself, so I'll move the boilerplate text in there right now. So this view tag is our red one. Next are two buttons. Each button already has its own view, but you'll notice over here on the right, the two buttons themselves are inside of a green container. So we'll add another view to represent that green container. And we'll say green. We'll remove some white space, and that really finishes off our yellow. So we've got yellow, which is our top half, that contains red view and green view. Cool. Next, we'll do blue down below. So we'll add another view tag, and for right now, we'll just add some text. I have a list of laps. We'll come back to implementation of laps in a little bit. But for right now, we're just going to say blue. All right, one more time through. We've got yellow for the top half, blue for the bottom half. Inside of yellow, we have red and green. Cool. So believe it or not, this is like a really handy trick. Try to, if you have mocks available, and I always recommend that you build off of mocks of some kind, or a schedule, or a sketch or a wireframe. Try to color code them and match up a color code to a particular view. It will make doing your Flexbox layout just a lot easier over time. So the next thing we'll do is start to add a little bit of styles at the bottom, and we're just going to add just a little bit right now, and then we'll continue on to the next section. So the first style that we're going to add is going to be for the container. And again, the container is just basically equivalent to the overall phone. And we're going to have two items in here, two properties. The first one is Flex1, and if you recall, this is to fill the entire screen. Basically, spread yourself out, encompass as much space as you possibly can. The next thing we'll add is align items, and this is going to be stretch. Now, we've only seen align items before with flex start, flex end, and center. So let's go back to our cheat sheet really quick and look at a diagram of what stretch looks like. So I'm going to scroll down to align items, and here's stretch. So what stretch does is it basically tells every one of the parent-child elements to take up as much space as it can in the align items direction. Align items by default for this guide right here runs top to bottom, but remember, align items for us in React Native runs left to right. Remember, that's the difference between the default flex direction in a browser being row as opposed to for React Native being column. So for us, align item stretch means every child should run as far left and as far right of the screen as possible. Once we get something rendered onto the page, we'll comment this line out to see what the difference is. So if the stretch doesn't make sense just yet, just bear with me for a little bit. Next, we're going to add a header and a footer. The header and the footer both correspond to the yellow and the blue. So the header is essentially the yellow area. Let's add just yellow, and for the footer, we'll just say blue. And each of these will also be Flex1. Okay, so with these rules here, we're moving down the right path. I'm going to go ahead and save this file. And let's refresh the simulator. Okay, so my mistake. One thing that is kind of frustrating about JSX is that we can't write inline comments. If we want to, we actually need to wrap them with curly braces. I would like to leave the comments around for just a little bit, so we'll go ahead and wrap each of those with curly braces. Looks like it doesn't like it. Let's just dump the tags or the comments altogether for right now. We'll come back to it. Okay. Cool. So let's go ahead and continue inside the next section.